Hello, so today I thought I would start a new writing vlog. This one is kind of going to be picking up where the last one where I was editing my book ended off, and I'm hoping that in this one we can get to the end of editing this book, and hopefully, unlike the last vlog, it will not take 4 months. So I'm currently editing my novel called The Animal Sense. This is the book formerly known as Saltbirds. It's coming up on about a year since I finished the first draft. I finished the first draft of that late March of 2023. Starting in the summer, I started doing my edits. I started by reading over the book and taking notes, and then in September, I started actually diving into the edits. Now I'm on draft 4, where I'm addressing things that I either realized I needed to change during draft 3 that I hadn't realized before, or just still working on any problems in the book that I feel like I just didn't properly address on draft 3. Been working through the chapters non-linearly and really focusing on the book chapter by chapter. So then the next draft will be an overall draft for the whole book where I will look at it linearly and focus more on line level, continuity. I feel like my editing was really, I just hadn't been writing consistently, to be honest. I had a really busy December where I just didn't have the time for this to be my focus. And then I feel like I was a bit burned out in January and not doing as much regular work on the draft as I would have liked. But I feel like I've gone back into the groove right now. It's mid-February and I'm leaving to go to Southeast Asia on March 22nd. I would like to be done these 2 drafts by that date. Now, obviously leaving to go for a trip is a lot of work. There's a lot that I have to do for work to prepare to be away for 3 weeks. It would just be perfect timing. I've been working on 2 chapters. This is my current progress as of today. This is what it looks like. I feel like some really good breakthroughs the past today and when I was working on the book on Friday. And over the weekend I was just visiting my girlfriend. Like, we don't live that far apart, but there is a ferry trip in between us. So on the way there, I actually focused very well. I find on ferries, I either can focus so well and I get so much work done, or they are my sensory nightmare and I can't focus on anything. It's all or nothing. I actually did some really good work on the way over there. I've been looking at these 2 chapters. I think they're 11 and 13. There's one chapter in between that's fantastic, but these 2 chapters were both quite weak and they both needed a lot of work. So I started by looking at the later one. I think it's 11 or 13. It was called Psychic Birth. I feel like I kind of clicked something into place with that chapter on Friday when I was working on the book on the ferry. That was quite a problem chapter for me. And then now I'm looking at the earlier chapter, which is called Harmonic Convergence, and I feel like I also hit a breakthrough with that chapter where I feel like I fixed a scene that was really had so much potential, but it was really, really weak. I feel like it's a scene that needs to be like a thematic core to the chapter, and I feel like I got it there just today when I was on the ferry coming home. This has been a complicated edit. There are still a few questions I have in mind where it's not a matter of just sitting down and implementing things. It's a matter of I actually don't know what I need to do yet. I think I may need to add a major cornerstone backstory event that is not there, that is kind of feels like it's missing. And I still have some questions about the ending that I can't figure out. Hello, so I'm just out for a little walk in the middle of the day, and I thought I would film something while I was out for a little walk. So I've been having a really, really great day in a few ways. First of all, in terms of writing, so I've been working on my revisions of The Animal Sense, and this week I really told myself I wanted to write every day. I've been really busy lately. I'd been out of town a bunch of times, back to back. So I've been busy like 3 weeks in a row, or 3 weekends in a row, and that's usually when I do the bulk of my writing. So I told myself that this week I really wanted to write every single day. So I've been looking at chapter 15, which is one of my problem chapters. Felt like it was really bogging down the whole structure of the book, to be honest, because it's at a very critical point. It's around the 2/3 mark, and so I felt like it was really killing the pace and tension during a section of the book that is supposed to be really exciting and really intense. And also, yes, please do make fun of the obscene amount of Fleet Foxes merch I wear in my vlogs. For Christmas, I treated myself to some Fleet Foxes merch. Sorry that I'm always wearing it. It's just very comfortable. So on Monday, that was my first day of working on this chapter, which is the chapter I really had set my sights on to tackle next. I decided that I wanted to rewrite the whole chapter. This chapter is set between 2 of the best chapters of the book, I think 2 really exciting chapters. And it felt like it was kind of just the place that I was shoving in a bunch of scenes that needed to be dealt with, but it didn't really have an arc. So I felt like the overall structure and the scenes themselves were all really, really weak. And there was also a pretty significant backstory arc in this chapter. We have several flashbacks, and so it all just felt not cohesive and not well earned. So I re-outlined the whole chapter, and I felt good about how I had re-outlined it and how I had framed it, and I decided I really just had to rewrite these scenes because all the scenes were underwhelming me. Yesterday on Tuesday, I wrote the first 2 scenes. I think there were, 5 or 6 new scenes I had to write. They fulfilled the same purpose as old scenes, but they were like new scenes in terms of the context and framing. And then this morning I was hosting a write-in stream for work. Normally when I'm hosting write-in streams, I don't do much writing. For me, when I write, I have to be like in my bubble, in my zone. And I mean, it's fine because I'm working, this is my job. Like, I'm getting paid to do this. The point is for me to like run the webinar and motivate other people. The point isn't for me to get a bunch of writing done. But today I got so much writing done. I think I wrote 3.5 scenes of this new version of this chapter that I had to write. And then I got accepted to grad school, which I'm really excited about. But I have been wanting to go back to school for years, and I'm really excited. It was actually just like a direct personal email from the prof that's going to be my supervisor saying that he was really excited by my application and that I was his top choice. So of course I emailed back and said yes. That's really exciting. It's a huge weight off my chest. Waiting for this decision was really kind of stressing me out. Today, it's the afternoon right now. I have a little bit more work to do, and then I'm going over to a friend's house to watch the Survivor premiere, which I'm very stoked about. We're both huge Survivor fans, so we like to watch the premieres and finales together. If I'm not too tired, maybe I'll see if I can finish the scene of the animal sense that I'm writing, or I might see if I can do it before I head over. We'll see, just because I feel like I'm on a good roll and I would like to finish the scene at least. And then all I'll have left to do for this chapter is review. There's one scene at the end of the chapter that I am not rewriting, but I do have to do a bit of work to make sure it fits cohesively into the chapter because I have some questions about that right now. And then I'm just gonna have to do another pass of it to review it, and then I think this chapter will be good and I'll feel really good about it. I feel so much better about this chapter now that I've rewritten it. I feel like it's way more tense, it's way more interesting, it's way more engaging. The structure actually feels like it has a build. Earlier, it felt like it started with what should have been exciting and then it totally fizzled out and it just felt not cohesive. Now that I know I'm going to grad school, I really have to think about timing my work and finishing up projects before I get to grad school. I'm going to be writing a thesis and starting as a student, so I really want to finish editing this book before then get to started on Tebow, which is the next project I'm going to start. It's a fantasy book. It's not going to be my thesis. I have plans for my thesis, but it's not going to be Tebow. It's going to be another book that I've not talked about at all. It's a total new idea. That means that I'm going to have a book that I want to draft before I even get to work on my thesis, which means that I really want to get a huge amount of that done in the summer. So I really got to power through with these animal sense revisions so that I can then get working on that, hopefully draft that fairly quickly, and then be able to go into grad student thesis mode. So it's the next day. It's like 5 p.m. and I just did the final pass of chapter 15 that I needed to do, and I feel great about it. I marked it as complete. There was one thing that was bothering me in the chapter. There was one scene that just felt like it wasn't part of the chapter. Like, it felt like the chapter had an arc, and originally it didn't really have an arc at all, but I had built an arc for it in this rewritten version. But I felt like there was one chapter at the end where it kind of felt like we had an arc in the fictive present and a backstory arc, and this chapter has more extensive backstory than a lot of the chapters. It's the chapter that mainly deals with the arc of Rowan's pyromania, and we're looking at like the origins of that. And I mean, there are really 3 flashbacks. Some of them are more just like narrative summary or like narrative sections and like reflections, but we're kind of looking at that arc alongside an arc that's happening in the fictive present. In the new rewritten version of the story, we had, 2 arcs that actually worked together cohesively, and then there was just this random scene at the end, and it felt like it was just kind of there because this needed to happen. It didn't feel like a cohesive part of the chapter. It just felt like a plot point that kind of had to be dealt with. But I found a spot a couple chapters earlier that I was able to move that to, and I feel way better about it being there. Looking over this new chapter and all the new scenes, I think they're really strong, and it just felt like a really strong chapter when before it felt really weak. I also gave it a new title, which is great because I felt like the title, it was one of the few titles that I wasn't so sure on. Originally it was called The Ascended Master, so originally this book didn't have chapter titles, but I really wanted on this draft to focus on stronger chapter work, and I felt like to do that I needed to title them to really hone in on the chapters themselves as like strong entities with strong arc. And so I decided that I wanted all the chapters to be named after like they either wanted them to be named after New Age concepts or just have titles that kind of invoked that or like felt within that realm. Retitled it, so it's now called Sacrificial Altar. I have 3 chapters that are marked as strong/complete, so these chapters are like almost there. 4 chapters marked as strong. A few of them I just need to review, or I think maybe I might need to add something, but I'm not 100% sure. 2 chapters marked as okay, which are both right near the end now, and they both just need more depth. That's really what those chapters need. And then I have 2 chapters marked as weak. So my current plan is to tackle these okay chapters near the end and that one strong chapter in the middle and get those all done. I'm going to look at chapter 6, which is one of my remaining weak chapters, and it needs a massive rethink. The core of this chapter used to be a completely different plot thread, but I cut that whole plot thread from the book. So the whole middle section of that chapter is gone. So I either need to take the ends of that chapter, because that stuff is still like plot relevant, and I need to move it into another chapter, or I need to add a whole new middle to this chapter, but I'm not sure what that would be, partly because I just haven't really sat down to think about it. So I'm not really sure. If I can think of something that I think will benefit the structure and plot development and that really like bolsters the pace in a functional way, then I'm going to do that. But if not, I think I'm just going to dissolve the chapter. Finally, at the end, I'm going to tackle the final chapter, which I don't know what I'm going to do with it. It's just the wrong ending, and I can't figure out what the right ending is. Like, I know what the climax of the book is, that's all good, but I don't know how to end it in terms of where my character is in the final chapter. Like, where am I going to leave this character on the final page, you know? And I don't really know. Soon I want to get it to the point where I'm just going to have these 2 real problem chapters left, and then I'll tackle them. They're the biggest problem chapters in the book. I'm kind of just leaving them till the end, or else it feels like too overwhelming to think about them. It's Sunday afternoon, and I'm just on my way home. I was just visiting my girlfriend for the weekend. Obviously, when I visit my girlfriend, I don't do any writing over the weekends, but I do typically write on the ferry. So on the way over on Friday, I got a good amount of writing done actually, and I finished editing the chapter that I was working on. I finished that, which was great because it was a big problem chapter for me, which is why I had been leaving it to the end. Not only fixed the chapter, but I fixed a big hole in the backstory. All I have left in this draft is the last chapter in the book, which is called The New Paradigm. There are a bunch of chapters in the book that I had marked as done, but then because of other changes I'd made to other chapters, it kind of like it meant that I had to go back and do some causality edits to other chapters. So now there are a bunch of chapters I have to go do little like changes in causality edits to. I was chipping away at several of those. I was going to leave my New Paradigm edits until the end. I was going to do a whole other draft of the book and then come back and figure out the last chapter because it's messing with me. But I think I figured it out. I think I figured out what the end needs to be, which is huge because this has been my biggest question mark for so long. I was just taking some notes and writing down some possible endings. And there's this one ending I'd been considering for a while. And I just didn't think it would work because I didn't think it was cohesive thematically or with the character. And I just was worried that it would feel the book was not actually set up for this. But as I was brainstorming, I realized that this ending is actually perfect for the themes, and it's actually perfect for the character arcs. And I just hadn't really been sure in my mind how to frame this scene, how to frame this event, but I had an idea on how to write the scene, how to frame the scene. It feels right. Like now that I've settled on this, I'm like, this is the right ending. I've started to be able to envision the scene. Like I can hear lines from it, and I can see how it's going to play out and be structured, and this ending feels right. I'm hoping that I can write that new scene tonight, and then I will have finished all of the big edits. So I'm just working on this final scene that I need to write, the last scene of the book. Drafting scenes while I'm revising feels very different from drafting the book. When I'm writing the first draft, like at that point I'm writing the book linearly, it feels like I'm kind of living through the story. And I don't get that as much when I'm going back to write scenes out of order after the fact. When I was writing the first draft of this book, I was almost a year ago. I was really thrilled by the drafting process near the end, except for the final scene. The final scene, I knew it was wrong as I was writing it. It was not working, you know, and it was the final scene that I had planned in the beginning, but I knew once I got there that something wasn't right. That final scene just didn't feel like I was writing the end of my book, and I've kind of been like unsatisfied with the end of the book ever since. I've never liked the last scene of this book in the whole year since I have had a complete draft of this book, and so it feels like I'm finally writing the end of this book. So I filmed this clip yesterday, but it was so windy that you literally couldn't hear a thing. So it's Tuesday, Sunday evening. After that clip that I had filmed where I was walking home, I wrote the end of my book. Finally. It was a really big revelation. This feels like the biggest revelation I've had, not just for this book, but in writing in as long as I can remember. Partly because, you know, the end of your book is like pretty important. When I was writing the first draft, well, the last scene of the first draft. This was almost exactly a year ago. It was the end of March 2023. I was writing the end of this book. I hit this final scene. It just didn't feel right. It's like I couldn't get the scene to end. I was seeking a last line to close off my book. And normally when I'm writing anything, short story, novel, I will kind of hit the last line and it feels like this moment of clarity that feels right, and I did not have that with this book. I was trying to find the end of the scene didn't feel right. I was trying to find a last line and I could not, and it was like the most unsatisfying end to a writing process of my life, because at a certain point I basically just had to accept that this last scene was a placeholder and the last line was a placeholder and the last paragraph was a placeholder, because you know when you're trying to end a scene and you just can't get it to end, like you can't find that end point that feels like conclusive and cohesive and right. It was like this really unsatisfying moment where I basically just had to accept, okay, I guess I have to call it a day. For a whole year this has been bothering me, the fact that this last scene and last line was not right. When I was editing the book, I made the decision to cut the plot thread that the last scene came from. I've had no end for the past few months and no idea what the end should be, and you know, I knew what the climax of the book was, but I didn't know what the last scene was, right? What point am I gonna leave you with this character? Like, how am I gonna show you where this character is and who they're gonna be after the book? That I didn't know. So on Sunday, I'm on the ferry and I was just chipping away at some other edits. Edit was very much it was like a domino effect where I would finish a chapter and then it would kind of uncomplete some other chapters. So it was like this whole domino effect. Sunday, I'm on the ferry and I'm just kind of checking off a bunch of final little edits. I decided to start writing out my document that I'm gonna send to all my critique partners when I send them the book. So normally when I send out a whole book for feedback, I'll also send out, you know, a document or just a list of questions of things that I really need help with. And obviously I would welcome feedback on any stuff, even stuff I'm not aware of. I mean, especially if I'm not aware of it, then I definitely need to hear about it. And so I get to the point where I'm writing out one of my problems, which is the ending. And so I'm writing out, like, you know, one of my big questions is the ending. These are the current options I have in mind. And so I'm writing out the different options I had in mind. And then I get to this final option, which I'd been considering for a few months. You know, it first came to me a few months ago and I didn't feel like I liked the idea because it was quite an exciting and cool ending. I was worried that it was just not in line with the character or the themes. So I start writing out why I have an issue with the ending, of why I don't think it's true to the character or the themes, and I realize that I'm completely wrong. And not only is it true to the character and the themes, it's the truest thing to the character and the themes. It is deeply true to the character and deeply true to the themes. It is the perfect ending, I kind of realize. And the fact that it's so true in such an unexpected way, it kind of is what makes it so perfect. I had this idea while I was on the ferry of how I was gonna frame the scene, and I love it when I can see how a scene is gonna be like shaped, you know? Like in my mind, when I can see kind of the shape of a scene narratively, like how it's gonna be structured from like a structure and like language perspective, and I could hear the lines formulating. I was ready to write, and that made sense because it's like I'd been waiting to write the scene for a year. Sat down and I wrote it, and I don't know how long it is, 1,000 words, it's not super long. I was thrilled by how this scene turned out, and while I was writing it, you know, beforehand there was still this thought in my mind, what if this isn't the right ending? What if it's not cohesive? What if it's not properly set up? But as I'm writing it, I'm like, this is actually perfect. As I hit the last line, I had that moment that I couldn't find with the original last scene. I had this moment where I wrote the last line and I was like, that is the end of the book. That is how the book is meant to end. This is the right ending. That not only marked the end of that scene, but it also marked the end of that whole draft, because before writing that scene and on the ferry, I had done all the other little changes I needed to do. It felt like such an overwhelming edit because it was like constantly shifting. Like I'd edit one thing and then I'd have to change something else, and then I'd start editing something and then I'd realize there was another big problem. The more edits I made, it felt like the more problems I uncovered. I feel actually great about the book now. I feel like I addressed pretty much everything that I wanted to address. I do have some questions about things that I just need to know how they convey. In the last few chapters that I was editing, I really solved some of my biggest problems. Now I want to do one more draft, and the tricky thing is that I want to get this draft done before my flight to Vietnam, which is in 10 days. I'm leaving for a 3-week trip to Asia on the 22nd, but kind of on the 21st because my flight is at 2 in the morning. All I have left is I want to do one draft of line edits and looking for continuity, because this last draft had so much shuffling. Like there was so much rearranging, adding, cutting, moving, that I feel like I need to do a continuity read, and I would like to do some line edits. I do have several people lined up to read the book, so I would really just like to get it out of my hands and into theirs. The problem is that this is also an incredibly busy week for me because I have so much work to do to prep for being away for 3 weeks. I basically have to do 3 weeks of work in 1 week. And I also have to do my taxes, and I also have to pack, and I also have to a bunch of other just random stuff that I have to get sorted before I leave. So it's an incredibly busy week. I'm just on like a midday like sanity walk. My hope is that at the end of each day, after I've gotten everything else on my to-do list done for the day, if I can just do 2 or 3 chapters. And if I can do 2 or 3 chapters a day, it will be done by the time I leave for my trip. First of all, reading it over, I was really excited to see that I feel like the first chapter is in some ways already setting up for the ending. Draft 3, I had done some really great, I think, voice work on this chapter, on the first couple chapters, and I was actually like so excited by the voice and how that was turning out. So before these last few big edits, the book still felt very messy in my mind, but suddenly, all of a sudden, it feels like it's working. I really do think at this point the bulk of the edits are done. It's just going to be some feedback and then some adjustments from feedback, and then it'll go to my agent. And I feel like I've done good work. I'm proud of myself, and I'm especially excited to have a complete polished final book and also to start writing something new. Hi, sir. Hello there. So it's Sunday. I decided I would just end this vlog real quick while I was out for my walk. It is so nice out today. It is the first day that feels like summer. So I've been on a really nice long walk since today. I have to go pack, but everything's pretty much organized and ready to go. I did like a practice pack situation on Friday. Everything fits in the suitcase. I actually had so much room to spare. I normally travel with just like a really small backpack. Like in the past for all my longer trips, 3-week plus, I've just used a backpack, like it's carry-on, and it's honestly like really small. I think it's only 30 liters. This trip I have way more room because they actually have a suitcase, and it's a small suitcase, like it's carry-on, but it's still way bigger than what I'm used to, which is just this like tiny backpack. I wanted to just finish up this vlog so that I can upload it and schedule it for my trip. I'm almost done this draft actually. It's going quicker than I thought. I'm ahead of schedule. I have 4 chapters left, so I think I should be able to do that today. I wanted to do 3 chapters a day over the weekend, and yesterday I think I did 6. I do have some questions that I need to ask my readers about the pacing through the middle and if it's too slow, since this is a very relationship driven book. It's kind of like things are kind of simmering until they boil over. So I have to ask if it gets too slow in the middle when the major progression happening is just in like kind of conversations. I have to ask about that, but that's fine. That's why we're getting feedback on the book. I just have to finish writing up all my questions for my readers and then send it out to them. And I've got a call with my agent scheduled on Monday, so I'll ask her if she wants to see it now or if she would rather see it after my next round of feedback, which I think is probably what I would prefer. Normally I'll get one or 2 people's feedback, usually just one, and then implement it and then get another person's, but that takes so long. You have to just wait for one person to read it and then implement the feedback and then another person. And I normally like doing that because it's less overwhelming to make changes because you're just using one person's feedback. And then you can see how those changes affect the reading by giving it to someone else. Each one of those cycles is taking like several months probably. And I just don't want to do that. I want to get this book out of my hands, especially now that I have grad school on the horizon. I really want to be wrapping up projects so that I have starting my thesis with the fewest plates in the air. So that's why I really want to get this as close to done as possible before September. I met with my grad school advisor last week, which was really great. Feeling even more excited than I was before. He was telling me about the teaching opportunities that I'm gonna have, and you know, I'm gonna have the opportunity to design and teach my own class. But because of that, I do feel like it needs to be crunch time. And I ambitiously wanted to draft a whole book before September, which I do think is possible. So I want to write Thibaut, my fantasy project, which I can start now. I mean, the only problem is that I'm about to go to Asia for 3 weeks. Wanted to draft that before grad school started. When am I going to edit it? I have no idea. Don't ask me that. I don't know. No one knows. But I think it's doable. The book is in 5 parts and I've already written the first 2 chapters. So part 1 is like halfway done. 5 parts, 4 or 5 chapters each, probably 15 to 20K per part. If I start in April, That's April, May, June, July, August, one part a month, and I'm done. So I think it's actually doable. I'm taking July and August off of work before my degree. You know, I was on the fence about that. The funding is good. Like, I'm not gonna work and do my master's degree at the same time. That's the whole point of doing a master's in writing, is that you're getting paid to write and teach. I've already gotten some really good funding, and there's even more that my advisor I was talking to, he was like, there's some really good funding that, like, we're gonna get you this funding, and it would be really shocking if you didn't get it. I'm not gonna work while I do my degree, because I'll be working for the university. I was just gonna take the last 2 weeks of August off to decompress before I started my degree, because I was like, you know, I should probably save as much money. But then I was talking to my mom about it, and she was like, just take the whole summer off. And I hadn't even really considered that. She was like, just take the summer off, like, give yourself a break. You're going to an intense program. You haven't really had a break in 5 years. Like, just take a break. Works out great because my girlfriend works at a school, and so she has July and August off. Kind of the opportunity for us to both have a summer off. You know, we have a bunch of little, like, camping trips and stuff planned, and so I'm gonna have more time to write than I typically would in the summer. So anyways, my hope is that I can fast draft a whole fantasy book before I start my master's degree. Why am I doing this to myself? The animal sense is at the feedback stage, so it's hard to really draw a timeline with that at this point. I feel like before these last few pieces clicked, like the ending and everything, it felt like such a hot mess. I was like, this book is a mess, it needs so much more work, it's a disaster. And then these last few pieces clicked, and now I'm like, this is a book, and it's functioning, and it's cohesive, and it's readable, and I'm happy with it, and I'm proud of it, and I've done something here, I've created something here. So does it need more refining, and do I need some feedback to tell me if certain things are conveying or working? Yes. The fact that I got it to this stage feels like a huge win, because that really took quite a while, and I do think that the bulk of the editing is done. That's all for this video. Now that the construction started in the back, I'm gonna go finish up my walk because it's so beautiful out. Like, I feel like I'm just basking. Like, I'm photosynthesizing right now. And then I'm gonna go pack, and then I'm gonna go finish editing this book. So that's all for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye!